I've not done a rant video in a while, so I thought I would do one because I've been noticing something, and it's going to be a simple statement of I'm wanting people to learn their builds. Like, seriously, learn your builds. Don't just copy and paste something you see someone else using, because what works for them doesn't always mean it's going to work for you. And a lot of the time, from what I've seen, it's why typically if I'm doing a build video, I'll always play it solo, because what looks like a really good build is, if you're running in a group, you don't know what the other people are using, and that person could be getting completely carried. Now, there's nothing wrong with being completely carried, but if you're going to show off a build as being this amazing thing and you're being carried, it's kind of a little bit misleading. And I kind of believe in fair, correct information. One of my biggest gripes is when someone goes, "Oh yeah, this is amazing, try this," and it's not. I used to get into a lot of trouble with the speedrunner and like the meta community when playing Monster Hunter World, because there'll be groups of people saying, "Oh yeah, defense boost 7 is amazing, it makes you really tanky." Once you got to the 1000 armor value in Monster Hunter World, having defense boost 7 literally nets you 0.31% more damage mitigation. That's not even a percent worth of damage mitigation. So when people would tell me that it's amazing, it's OP, it makes you really tanky, I would laugh my head off, call them stupid, and then go beyond out of my way to categorically and unequivocally prove them wrong. Because that's just the sort of arsehole I am. So when I see someone post in the little group chat, when I'm just trying to run missions, I put it on like matchmaking just to see if people need help, or, you know, a little bit of community value, whatever. And they're running an LMG build, one in multiplayer, which is, if you're doing that, you are a special kind of special. And two, claiming that their build is amazing and they barely did a quarter of the damage of the 4-man group. Died a lot as well. Could have been player skill, but they kept telling me that the build was amazing. Now, I have recently found out who actually made this build. They're not going to be named because that would be potentially attacking someone that is just uninformed. They might have just been struggling for content and just, I don't know, found a weird meme build they can make up. But what bothers me is a lot of these YouTubers will be like, "Oh yeah, look, the absolute best build you can do." No. There's the best build for you, and there's the best build for me, and there's the best build for everyone else. And how you work that is entirely independent of whether it's the best or not, because everyone has different values and tastes. Most of the time, if I'm in an Iron Horse raid, I run healer. I like being the healer. That's the absolute best build for me. And if I can't be the healer, I would go for the tank next. Not because I don't have the worthwhile DPS builds or other people have better or worse DPS builds. Just for me, that is the best. I like doing that. That is what I do. So, and I'm aware I'm not the biggest YouTuber. I've only really recently started doing Division 2 content again. At probably one of the worst times ever, because there's new DLC and content coming out for the game, which basically means everything I'm currently posting now will be changed in a couple of months, and it's mostly not worthwhile, but I do this for the fun of it. I like doing this. I've met some absolutely amazing people doing this, and going out of my way to prove other people wrong doesn't really get me anything other than making me look like a dickhead. And how could I do this to someone and blah blah blah. I'm basically saying, if you've come across this video, my one, and you understand what I'm saying of learn the build, and I will be proving my point pretty damn soon. I'm hoping, because you should, actually agree with me, because it's just one simple fact of just because someone's put it on YouTube doesn't mean it exists. I once saw a wiki page of how pasta grows on trees. Like, come on. The game is actually pretty simple, just basic math. You've got +% and then times%, increase, amplified, and that's like the hardest part of the math of the game. So as long as you can add and do a little bit of multiplication, it's pretty damn simple on how this game works in its DPS and damage tracking. So yeah, this build is 4-piece True Patriot. Going to specialisation, I'm actually getting a headache thinking about this. Sleep Near. And what you do is use the gunner pouch for +50 rounds, use the True Patriot set for the +30 rounds, and you end up with it's +30%. You're at 100 rounds, +30% of 100 is 30, so you get a 130 round magazine on Sleep Near with Perfect Frenzy. Perfect Frenzy is upon reload, especially from MT, you get +3% fire rate and 3% weapon damage for every 8 rounds in the magazine. 130 divided by 8 is 16.25. You then do 16.25 times 3. That's 48.75. So you're going to get a 48.75 increase in fire rate and weapon damage. And the really, really funny thing with this is that even compared to something like the L86, admittedly the L86 is kind of unfair because it's actually one of the most powerful weapons in the game regardless, but it only comes with a 50 round mag. Even with that full buff of Perfect Frenzy, the buff doesn't actually last long enough for your full mag. You're actually losing out on about 35 rounds worth of the buff. So having the True Patriot set is kind of redundant because you get to a point of where it doesn't scale high enough for the weapon to compensate for it. So you might as well actually just go with the gunner mag and get the full buff for the entire mag and spec into a bit more damage, because True Patriot is completely wasted on this. But along with the fact that it only puts you above the L86 by about 2.4% in terms of damage, and that's per magazine. The problem then here is the L86 has like half the reload speed of the Sleep Near. So over the course of, I don't know, it was a conflict, full interaction, many reloads, many dead people, you survived, congratulations. The L86 will probably net you about double. I think the math I worked out was like 1.86 times, which is near enough double. It does like 86% more DPS over the course of like, for the Sleep Near it was like 4 magazines, and for the L86 it was like 7 magazines. It does have a slower fire rate, but yeah, it was like near enough double the damage, and that just keeps scaling up exponentially the more magazines that you use. So not only does the buff not last long enough, True Patriot is completely wasted on it because you're not doing that much damage. Along with the fact that in practice, running around with this in the open world, when you do get the buff, you're going to kill one target pretty damn quick. The rest of the targets are then going to scatter. The moment you try pinging them, they're going to suppress. So you've now wasted even more of the buff. So you've now got to close in the gap, by which point the buff is expired. So you've now got to try and kill them without using the buff. And just to prove a point here, I am using my L86 build, and like, I think the Sleep Near at one point got to like just into the 5 million on the DPS. So there's my L86 with near enough 8 mil, I think that was, or like 7.8 or something. Although admittedly on the Sleep Near I wasn't going for headshots on the L86 I was, because it can go for headshots because it's got a lot more of an accurate and stable weapon. But even if we just go for the standard body shots, let's just put this back to named. I'm not even going to go for the range, so just going for the standard body shots, just going to keep it chill. 4.7, go for another target, miss a few because moving target. 4.9. But even still, I'm killing them a lot quicker, even with Sleipnir having its full Perfect Frenzy buff. Like, there's just no point, one, in using an LMG. In solo play, yeah, fine, I get it, but in multiplayer, no. Just because you're playing that stupid suppress games that you're just going to annoy your other teammates, slow them down, they can't keep their buffs active, you struggle keeping your buffs active. It just ends up being a little bit of a mess playing an LMG in multiplayer. But trying to highlight this build with Sleipnir, True Patriot, 130 round mag with Perfect Frenzy is like some amazing thing. It's not. It's possibly one of the lower end damage builds I've seen. It wasn't fun to play. I do have a bit of gameplay footage of it coming up, and I basically just freely quit because I was playing the catch the suppressed target game, because the moment I'd open up they'd all go suppressed, and I've now got to run round and try and get them out of being suppressed to actually kill them, which has now put me in danger because I'm not in cover and I'm running around like a lunatic. In short, and I'm going to be quite blunt about this, this is possibly one of the worst builds I have seen / used. I'm not trying to say my builds are better or I have the best builds going, but my builds have a little bit of thought that's actually gone into them rather than Unga Bunga, look what I can do. I try and make the best, I call them skeletons, really, ideas which other people can use. I will never say that this is the absolute best build you can do, although I have already mathed out probably the highest DPS rate of any build that you can do, like the absolute maximum damage that you are capable of doing. I already do have a build for that. Is it worthwhile? Probably not. But it is what it is. You can do things like that. But I'm never going to say it's the best absolute build, simply because it never will be, because how I play and how other people play are very, very different. And that's basically going to be the main point, really. Now, I am aware that by saying that it's contradictory because some people may like this build. But if you are liking this build, or you know who this is on about, who I'm on about, that made this build, etc., etc., it doesn't necessarily mean they are bad. It just means them advertising it as a good build is stupid, like ridiculously, because it's not. It's very low on the DPS scale, even compared to other LMG builds. Like when it comes to LMG, you've basically got like two choices, and that's Pestilence, simply because when it comes to actual damage, that weapon is absolutely ridiculous, but not because the weapon itself is powerful, like the output of its actual damage, its RPM, its weapon damage, but because of the debuff it has on it. It scales up to 500% per tick, and you get like 1 tick per second. You can do absolutely chunks with that weapon, and it just becomes ridiculous. And the other one being the L86, as for a straight up damage output weapon. Oh look, suppressed, suppressed, suppressed. So now I need to try and keep them suppressed to close the gap on them so that I can actually kill them, which now means I'm just wasting the buff, and it just ends up being this really annoying, stupid game. But yeah, the L86 is probably just outright stupid in terms of overall damage output, and they're basically your top two LMGs. I've seen a lot of people run the Bullet King, and the only reason that thing actually kind of does win out on the DPS is because it essentially has a 1,000 round magazine, and if you play very, very accurately, you essentially have infinite ammo. So the only reason it wins out is because other weapons have to reload. But in terms of straight DPS, bullet for bullet with the fire rate, the Bullet King is probably the lowest in the DPS game of every LMG in the game, potentially even every weapon. I've not looked into that, compared the Bullet King to other weapons. It's kind of hard to do because you kind of got to equate in reload on one weapon and not on the other. But yeah, in short, this build is terrible. The person that made this build and advertised it as a good build is terrible. It's completely and utterly not worthwhile. You do no damage. Your survivability is quite low. Although you've got a lot of armor, it's low because you have to run in and close the gap on suppressed targets. Its kill time is terrible. It's just categorically not worth it. In comparison, this is me with my LMG build using the L86, and yeah, I basically just pick them apart one by one, and then I quit because I just wanted to prove a point, because this really, really, really annoyed me, and I just couldn't be. Yeah. It's like running sacrifice on a shield build. You're just going to get nowhere. Anyway, that will conclude my rant. Don't run Sleipnir because it's a bad weapon. Don't run True Patriot with Sleipnir because you don't get anything for it. And basically the only use for Sleipnir is destroying the pipes in the Iron Horse raid because of the fire rate, and you can stack health damage onto it. Have fun, good luck, don't die. It's bad for the health.